My name is Nora, and the day my family laughed when I became a cleaner, they didn't laugh when I bought the company, became the turning point of my life. I stood in the marble lobby of Sterling Industries, holding a mop in one hand and my termination notice in the other. My brother Marcus leaned against the reception desk, arms crossed, that smug smile playing at his lips. "You know, Nora," he said, loud enough for the morning staff to hear. "I always knew you'd end up back here, just didn't think it would be with a bucket." The receptionist covered her mouth, but I saw the laughter in her eyes. That moment, that exact moment, was when something inside me didn't break. It crystallized. Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Let me back up, because this story doesn't start with a mop. It starts 23 years earlier, in a colonial house in Connecticut, where my father built an empire from nothing. Gerald Hartley was a self-made man, the kind who believed in hard work, integrity, and family above all else. He started Sterling Industries in our garage, industrial cleaning supplies and facility management, and grew it into a company worth $40 million. I grew up watching him negotiate deals at the dinner table, listening to him talk about contracts and client relationships like they were living, breathing things. My mother died when I was 8. After that, it was just Dad, me, and Marcus. My brother was 5 years older, charming in that effortless way that made people overlook his laziness. Dad saw it but loved him anyway, kept hoping Marcus would grow into responsibility. I was the one who actually cared about the business. At 16, I was filing inventory reports. At 18, I was sitting in on client meetings. By 22, I had a business degree from Cornell and a 5-year plan to modernize our operations and expand into sustainable cleaning technologies. Dad promised me the company, not verbally, not in some vague future talk, but in writing. I saw the will. He told me over dinner one night, just the two of us at that big oak table. "You've got the mind for this, Nora. Marcus has the charm, but you've got the vision. Sterling Industries is yours." I remember crying, not from ambition, but from pride, from feeling seen. Then Dad had a stroke, massive, sudden, cruel. One day he was reviewing quarterly reports. The next he was in ICU with half his body unresponsive. He survived, but barely. The man who came out of that hospital wasn't my father. He was confused, frustrated, trapped in a body that wouldn't obey him. His speech slurred. His right side remained partially paralyzed. And Marcus saw an opportunity. I should have seen it coming. The way Marcus suddenly started visiting Dad every day, bringing his favorite foods, reading him the newspaper. The way he'd dismiss the nurses when I arrived, claiming Dad needed rest. I thought he was finally stepping up, finally being the son Dad always hoped he'd become. I was working 60-hour weeks, keeping the company running while Dad recovered. I didn't have time to notice the poison being dripped into his ear. The lawyers called me on a Tuesday. Dad had revised his will. Marcus was now CEO and majority shareholder. I was given a 15% stake and a vaguely titled position as operations consultant. When I confronted Dad, he could barely look at me. His words came slow, painful. "Marcus needs this. You're strong. You'll be fine." Behind him, Marcus stood with his hand on Dad's shoulder, wearing an expression of concern that made me want to scream. I learned later that Marcus had convinced Dad I was planning to sell the company, that I'd been meeting with competitors, taking calls from acquisition firms. He'd fabricated emails, created fake documents, gaslit our father during the most vulnerable period of his life. And Dad, trapped in confusion and fear, believed his son, the one who'd actually shown up every day for the previous 5 years. I stayed because I loved that company. I thought I could prove myself, show Dad the truth. For 2 years, I worked under Marcus, watched him run our father's legacy into the ground with bad decisions and expensive mistakes. He brought in his fraternity brothers as vice presidents, guys who couldn't tell a balance sheet from a bedsheet. He canceled our contracts with sustainable suppliers because they were too expensive. then lost three major clients who'd specifically hired us for our environmental commitment. Revenue dropped 18% the first year, 22% the second. I documented everything, every bad decision, every missed opportunity, every client complaint. I brought reports to Marcus, spreadsheets showing exactly where we were hemorrhaging money. He'd nod, say, "Thanks, sis," and do nothing. When I went over his head to the board, Dad's old friends who were supposed to be protecting his legacy, they smiled patronizingly and told me Marcus had growing pains but was finding his footing. Dad died during the third year of Marcus's reign, pneumonia complicated by his condition. I held his hand while he went, and his last clear moment was looking at me with something that might have been regret. Or maybe I just wanted to see it there. Marcus cried at the funeral, gave a moving speech about carrying on Dad's vision. I stood in the back and felt nothing. 2 weeks later, Marcus fired me, called me into his office. Dad's office, which he'd redecorated with modern art and a standing desk, and handed me the termination notice. "It's not personal, Nora. The board thinks we need to streamline operations, and your position is redundant." Redundant? 23 years of my life, 5 years of active management, 3 years of watching him destroy everything. And I was redundant. I had some savings, enough for 6 months if I was careful. I rented a studio apartment in a part of town where I'd never lived, where nobody knew the Hartley name. I applied for jobs in my field, but Marcus had gotten there first. He'd called in favors, made quiet phone calls to his network. Nobody would touch me. References went unreturned. Interviews got canceled. I was blacklisted from my own industry. That's when I saw the job posting. Sterling Industries was hiring custodial staff. The irony was so sharp it cut. But I needed money, needed health insurance, and some dark part of me wanted to see what Marcus had done to the place up close. I applied under my mother's maiden name, Nora Chen, put down my studio apartment address, listed my education and experience vaguely enough to pass as someone qualified, but not suspicious. They hired me. Minimum wage, night shift, cleaning the offices where I used to make decisions. My supervisor was a kind woman named Rosa, who'd worked for Sterling for 15 years. She remembered me. I could see it in her eyes during training, but she never said anything, just showed me how to work the floor buffer and which bathroom products to use where. That first night, cleaning Marcus's office, I found the quarterly reports on his desk. He never locked anything. Too arrogant to think anyone would dare look. Revenue was down 38% from Dad's final year. 3 more major clients had left. The company was bleeding, and Marcus was covering it with creative accounting and desperation loans. I took pictures with my phone, started documenting everything, every night. Financial reports left carelessly around, emails open on computers people forgot to lock, contracts poorly negotiated, safety violations that would make OSHA salivate. I wasn't planning anything yet. I just couldn't stop being who I was, someone who saw systems, patterns, opportunities. Rosa and I got close during those months. Late nights, just the two of us cleaning floors and emptying trash cans. "You talk." She told me about her daughter going to nursing school, about her husband who'd passed from cancer. I told her some of my story. Not all of it. She listened with those wise eyes and said, "You know what I've learned? Cleaning up after rich people for 15 years? They're only powerful because everyone agrees to pretend they are." The moment came 6 months into my custodial career. I was cleaning the executive conference room after a late board meeting, and they'd left everything. Every document, every report, every panicked presentation Marcus had given, trying to explain why the company was failing. But there was something else. A folder marked Confidential Acquisition Proposal. Marcus was selling the company, not to save it, but to cash out before it completely collapsed. He'd found a corporate raider who specialized in buying struggling companies, liquidating their assets, and selling off the pieces. Sterling Industries, my father's life's work, the livelihoods of 200 employees, 40 years of relationships, and reputation, was going to be gutted for parts. And Marcus would walk away with millions while everyone else got severance checks and unemployment. I sat on the floor of that conference room, surrounded by the evidence of my brother's betrayal, and I didn't cry. I smiled, because now I had a plan. I reached out to every person Marcus had screwed over in the past 3 years. Former employees he'd fired unjustly, clients he'd alienated, suppliers he'd stiffed on payments. I used my real name, told them exactly who I was and what I was offering, a chance at revenge and justice. Most ignored me. Some hung up, but enough listened. One of those people was James Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Environmental Solutions. Dad had mentored him 20 years ago when he was just starting out. Marcus had canceled our contract with him to save costs, losing us our biggest client in the process. James was angry, but more than that, he was successful. His company had tripled in size since leaving us, and he'd been looking for ways to expand into direct facility management. We met at a diner far from downtown, where nobody from my old life would see us. I laid out everything: the financial mismanagement, the impending sale, the assets that were actually valuable buried under Marcus's incompetence. The company is worth saving, I told him. It just needs to be saved from Marcus. James stirred his coffee, considering. What's your play, Nora? Buy it before the raider does. Make a better offer to the board. They're Dad's old friends, and they know Marcus is failing. They're just too proud to admit they backed the wrong horse. Give them an out that lets them save face and save the company. And where do you fit in? I want to run it, not as a favor, as an employee. I'll earn my position, prove my value. But James, I built that company as much as my father did. I know every client, every contract, every relationship. I can turn it around in 18 months. He studied me across that cracked vinyl booth. You know your brother will fight this. Let him. The next 3 months were surgical. James made quiet inquiries, built relationships with board members, showed them projections of what Sterling could become under proper management. I fed him insider information, Marcus's worst decisions, the clients ready to return, the innovations we could implement. We didn't break any laws, but we bent ethics into interesting shapes. Meanwhile, I kept cleaning offices, kept documenting, kept my head down while building my case up. Marcus walked past me twice during those months. Once he literally didn't see me. So far beneath his notice, I was invisible. The second time he glanced at me, said, "Trash needs emptying in the men's room," and kept walking. He didn't recognize his own sister. The board meeting happened on a Thursday. James presented his offer: $32 million, above market value for a struggling company, with commitments to retain all employees and maintain the Sterling name. Marcus presented his Raiders offer, $28 million, with no such commitments. The board debated for 4 hours. I wasn't in that room. I was cleaning the bathroom on the executive floor, listening to the murmur of raised voices through the ventilation system. Rosa found me there, sitting on the tile floor with my cleaning supplies. She didn't say anything, just sat down next to me and held my hand. When the door finally opened, James came looking for me. I saw it in his face before he spoke. "They accepted," he said. "Sterling Industries is mine, and per our agreement, you start Monday as Chief Operating Officer." I didn't go back to the studio that night. I went to Dad's grave, stood there in my custodial uniform with cleaning product stains on my knees, and told him everything. Told him what Marcus had done, what I was going to do, how I was going to make it right. A groundskeeper working late came over to ask if I was okay. I realized I was crying. "Yeah," I told him. "For the first time in years, I really am." Marcus found out Friday morning. He called me, my personal phone, which he hadn't dialed in 3 years. "You did this." Not a question, an accusation. "Hi, Marcus. You manipulated the board, fed them lies about me, you sabotaged me." "No," I said calmly. "You sabotaged yourself. I just documented it." I'm challenging this. I'll sue. I'll. You'll what? Show them the evidence of your financial mismanagement, the contracts you botched, the clients you lost. Please, Marcus, take it to court. I have 3 years of documentation proving you drove this company into the ground. The silence on the other end was profound. Then, Dad wanted me to have this. That's what broke something in me. Not anger, but pity. Dad was dying and confused, and you took advantage of that. You gaslighted our father during the worst time of his life because you wanted something you didn't earn. I love that company, Marcus. I bled for it, and you treated it like a toy you got bored with. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother the day you chose inheritance over integrity. He hung up. I never spoke to him again. Monday morning, I walked into Sterling Industries through the front door, wore my best suit, the one I'd saved from my old life. Rosa was at her usual station, starting the early cleaning shift. She saw me, and her face broke into the biggest smile. I hugged her right there in the lobby, didn't care who saw. James gathered the entire company in the main warehouse, 200 employees worried about their jobs, their futures. He introduced himself, explained the transition, promised that things were going to improve. Then he introduced me. Some of you might remember Nora Hartley. She's Gerald Hartley's daughter, and she's worked in every aspect of this company since she was 16 years old. She's been on the floor with you, literally, for the past 6 months. She knows this business better than anyone alive. And starting today, she's your chief operating officer. The applause started small, uncertain. Then Rosa started it properly, clapping loud and steady, and others joined. Some of the older workers, people who'd known me before Marcus, were crying. I saw recognition dawn on faces as they realized the night custodian had been me. I stepped up to the microphone. My father built this company on 3 principles: quality work, honest dealing, and respect for every person who contributes. We lost our way, but starting today, we're finding it again. I can't promise it'll be easy. We have a lot of damage to repair, but I can promise you this. I will work harder than anyone in this building to make Sterling Industries something we're all proud of again. The rebuilding took exactly 18 months, like I'd predicted. We called back former clients, many of whom had only left because of Marcus. We implemented the sustainable technologies I'd planned years ago. We promoted from within, gave people like Rosa leadership training and better positions. We turned profitable in month 14 and exceeded Dad's best year by month 20. Marcus tried to sue. His lawyer sent threatening letters about wrongful termination and defamation. James's legal team buried them in documentation. Eventually, Marcus settled for his 15% stake payout and disappeared. I heard he moved to Arizona, tried to start some kind of tech venture. I didn't follow up. Some people don't deserve space in your head. I visited Dad's grave on the anniversary of Sterling's turnaround, brought flowers, a bottle of his favorite scotch, and the quarterly report. We did 42 million this year, I told the headstone. Employee satisfaction is up 60%. We won Environmental Business of the Year. And Dad, everyone here loves coming to work again. Rosa became our director of operations. Her daughter finished nursing school and sends her mother postcards from the hospital where she works. James and I built a partnership that extended beyond business. He became the brother I should have had, the ally who believed in competence over genetics. People ask me if I'm angry, if I still resent what Marcus did. The truth is more complicated than yes or no. I'm angry at the wasted years, at what he did to Dad, at the employees who suffered under his incompetence. But I'm also grateful, in a strange way, because his betrayal forced me to become stronger than I ever would have needed to be. It taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're actually worth. On my office wall, Dad's old office, which I redecorated with his original furniture and his favorite photos, I keep one thing from my custodial days. It's my name badge, the one that says, Nora Chen, Night Custodian. James asked me once why I kept it. I told him it reminds me that there's no position beneath your dignity when you're building towards something meaningful. Last month, we hired 50 new employees. I personally met with every single one during their orientation, learned their names, their stories, their ambitions. Told them that Sterling Industries is a place where hard work gets recognized, where talent gets promoted, where your last name doesn't matter more than your contribution. One of the new hires, a young woman named Sophie, stayed after orientation. "Ms. Hartley, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "How did you do it? Come back from losing everything?" I thought about that question, about all the nights cleaning floors and swallowing pride in documenting evidence, about the moment I chose strategy over rage, patience over revenge. "I didn't come back from losing everything," I told her. "I built something better from what was left." She smiled, thanked me, and left. I stayed in my office, looking out over the facility floor where people were working, creating, contributing. Dad's legacy saved, not because of blood or inheritance or who was supposed to deserve what, because someone decided to fight for it the right way. The night custodian still works here. His name is Miguel, and he's studying business administration at community college. I bought him textbooks last semester, told him Sterling Industries has a management training program for employees who want to advance. His eyes lit up the same way mine used to when Dad talked about the future. Sometimes I work late and cross paths with the night shift. We nod to each other. This understanding between people who've seen the building at its quietest, most honest hour. Rosa says they call me the boss who cleaned. Say it with respect. That means more to me than any title. Marcus never apologized. I never expected him to. Some people go through life believing they're entitled to things they didn't earn, angry at a world that eventually demands payment. I used to wish he'd understand what he'd done, feel remorse, seek redemption. Now I realize his punishment is living as himself, and that's sufficient. My revenge wasn't dramatic or violent. It was patient, strategic, built on competence and truth. I didn't destroy Marcus. I let him destroy himself and then built something better in the aftermath. That's the thing about real justice. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be thorough. Last week, a business magazine did a profile on Sterling Industries' turnaround. They asked me for the secret, the one thing that made the difference. I told them the truth. There's no replacement for actually caring, for knowing your business from the ground up, for respecting every person who contributes to your success. They printed it, but I don't think they really understood. The secret is simpler than people want to believe. You can't manage what you don't understand. You can't lead people you don't respect. And you can't build anything lasting on lies, shortcuts, and inherited authority. Marcus had the title. I had the knowledge. In the end, knowledge is the only real power. Sometimes late at night when the building is quiet, I walk the floors my father walked. I see people's family photos on desks, projects in progress, evidence of pride in work. This is what we built, not just a company, but a place where effort matters, where people are valued, where doing things right means something. My family laughed when I became a cleaner. They didn't laugh when I bought the company. But here's what I learned in the space between those two moments. The person mopping floors with purpose has more power than the person sitting in an office they don't deserve. Because power isn't given, it's built. And I built mine one night shift at a time, one documented failure at a time, one strategic relationship at a time. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's becoming so successful that they become irrelevant. And in the end, that's exactly what I did.